What's going on at the internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Today we're going to take a look at the KINHANK K36. There's a few different unique features about this handheld versus the R36 and other ones that have been cloning each other here for about the last year and a half. And that's to start with, this one has a booty. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know that I am a sucker for a good booty, especially on my handhelds. I know where your mind is going. But is that all that's different on this one? We're going to find out today. Let's take a look. Alright, today we are going to take a look at the KINHANK K36, as I already mentioned. Kind of an interesting little handheld. It's got a lot of similarities to some things we've seen in the past, but it also has a few unique, quirky things all of its own. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here today. It does tell you here on the box not to play for long sessions, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of trying to sell these things. But I do like that the KINHANK started putting this on stuff. My biggest dream is to stay young forever. I would agree with that 100%. That is something I can get behind. So we do have a box inside of a slider thing. One thing I did find unique about this particular handheld here is there is no paper around the handheld. It has this in here, which is cool. This obviously, it probably does the most work. And we don't really need that plastic or paper on here, so maybe we're helping eliminate a little e-waste by not having it. But it is interesting that it is not on there. Let's take a look at what else comes inside of here. We do have our USB-A to USB-C charger, which is coming in a lot of devices these days. Uniquely, though, this one does come with a memory card reader. I don't think I've seen one come with a memory card reader since the EmuElec Plus. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while. This used to be a more common thing. These also used to be more expensive on the open market. But I haven't tried this one. I wouldn't recommend typically using the ones that come with these. They don't usually work very well. It's obviously not very expensive because they put it in the box in a very inexpensive device. And even if it does work, it's going to be slow. It is USB 2.0. We do have our origami accordion here. This is actually pretty useful. Granted, the translations in this thing are absolutely atrocious. I would recommend maybe taking a look through this because every system on this device that's not RetroArch has its own hotkeys on how to get in and out of menus and or exit the game. You're going to find yourself stuck in a lot of places, I think, if you don't actually take a look through this. I know I was, and I'm pretty sure that's why this handheld has a reset button, because people can't figure out what buttons to hit. This is all soon going to be remedied, but we will talk about that as we go ahead here. And last but not least, we do have the handheld itself. Take her out of here. She does have that one unique feature. Ooh, and it feels nice in the hands. Nice in the hands. But we'll get to that here in just a minute. This here is the K36 by KINHANK. We'll go through the I/O here real quick like we do every time before we start discussing everything else that's awesome about this or not awesome depending on the handheld. Here we do on the top where we always start, we do have our 3.5 hole. We do have our OTG hole. That's a USB-C OTG, and we do have a DC hole for charging. On the back here, KINHANK was nice enough to put their name on here, along with the model number and charging specifications, but we do have also our shoulder buttons on the back here. They are molded in with our booty, and they're not overly clicky. They have a pretty short throw to them. They feel pretty good, and they are actually situated pretty well in comparison to other devices like this. Just with this cool like flying V pattern that they have going on. On the right hand side over here, we do have our power button, our reset, and then our micro SD hole. I believe that they sent me a 64 gig card. Yep, it's unbranded, so we're going to have to change that up here at some point, but that's what you're going to find on the right. On the left hand side over here, you are going to find your volume rocker for volume up and down. On the bottom here, you are going to find your speaker hole for your speaker. It has a downward firing speaker, which is different than pretty much every other handheld in this category. On the front here, we do have our 3.5-inch IPS display. Let's see how this sounds. Kind of satisfying. That's what she said. All right, we do have our D-pad, which does have a pretty good pivot to it, to be honest with you. This will likely be terrible for platforming games, but pretty good for fighting games, it feels. It's actually got a good touch to it. I like it. We do have our function button, which doesn't function for the most part. Specific to pretty much all these devices that have this function button. Most of them do not work, but to be fair, if we do see an ArcOS update that comes out for this, odds are pretty good that's going to work. We do have our face buttons here. They have a decent amount of travel. They are a little sloppy, but they're not too bad. The tolerance is actually pretty decent. and they do not go below the shell. In fact, they have a fair amount of gap between them and the shell, so something I wouldn't have to worry about on that. You do have your start and select, and you do have your joysticks, which happen to be Hall effect joysticks in this, and they are clicky. We'll go over the specs of this handheld here real quick. You're going to see a lot of similarities and a few differences, so we'll talk about that here. The KINHANK K36 is rocking a 3.5-inch 640x480 IPS display at 500 nits. Its CPU is the popular RK3326 at 1.5 gigahertz at 64-bit quad-core Cortex A35 processor. It does have a Mali G31 MP2 GPU, dual high-precision Hall effect joysticks, memory. There is a single-slot memory versus two, which you'd see on most of these handhelds. The speaker is a single-cavity downward firing. I'm pretty sure it's 1 watt. The battery is a stifling 3,500 milliamp hours, or 2 to 4 hours of gameplay. Charging is a Type-C. It's 5 volt, 2 amps like all of these handhelds are, and it is a 2-hour to full charge. I already know there's going to be a few questions here. We're going to fire this up here real quick. It does take a while to fire up. I haven't actually timed it, but it does seem like it is taking a while. And I think that's just because KINHANK wants you to know that they got behind this. Let me also specify why there are 2 versions of this out. Surprise. There's just the K36 as well as the KINHANK version of the K36. Speaking of which, I really like how this is done on here. I think the designs are really cool, and the other one just says K36 here, which is really what drew me to this device, honestly, was specifically just these stupid decals they put on, but I think they just look really clean. But I digress. The reason why I went with the KINHANK version of this handheld is they're specifically known for selling hard drives with multiple terabytes worth of ROMs on them, as well as home consoles or like Android TV boxes with multiple terabytes worth of ROMs on them. So I figured it would be interesting to see how they curated their ROMs list on this particular handheld. So I went with the KINHANK version versus getting just the traditional K36. I probably should order the other one just to see if there actually is a difference, but I'm sure I could figure it out without ordering another one, but maybe it'll give me an excuse to get another device. We'll see. So it does take a while to load this up, and we will go through a few things here. First off, when you get this handheld, I would recommend going in, just hit the start button, go into the user interface settings for EmuElec, and change the theme. Now I'm going to show you why. So if you're on this main screen here, you can scroll along and try to count all the game systems that are in here, and you will realize that you are short a bunch of game systems that are listed as having ROMs in them and being playable. It does look pretty good. It looks like you have a decent amount of systems, right? But when you go in here and you actually change the theme, for some reason, the KINHANK theme is actually hiding a bunch of the systems that are in the handheld. So if you stick with this theme, I guess you will get more systems on here. Now, I would maybe add some new themes. You can actually go on EmuElec and put different themes on here. You are kind of stuck here. One thing you didn't hear me talk about was this having Wi-Fi. This does not have Wi-Fi, nor does it have the option to use an external Wi-Fi card like we have been getting used to doing over the years. You don't have that option to use a dongle on this particular device right now, the way that EmuElec is set up. But this is the most unlocked version of one of these from the factory, I think, that we've seen so far, where you have actually access to be able to make changes. One thing that they did too on this, which is specific kind of to EmuElec, which I think is why they went with it, and KINHANK tries to typically kind of simplify things. Also, they use EmuElec a lot on some of their home consoles, but you get a lot more, we'll say, personal customization without having to learn how to use RetroArch, because you can actually go in here and change everything, including even the menu to RetroArch and what it would look like when you go into it. So you can make that XMP configuration problems. You can really make any of those changes, but you also have the option to go in here and change any of your game settings ahead of time, specific to any particular system. And in your collection settings, you can actually go through. So you do have 49 collections. It really shows about 30 to begin with. So now we have all 49 showing. You are now able to go through and make a lot of different changes. So that's your collection and your system settings. You can make those types of changes as well. They do have a developer option area, which is where you'd think you'd find Wi-Fi. Not on here for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure why it's missing. I don't remember ever seeing it missing from EmuElec, but it happens to be missing on this particular one. So, but this here, you can go through and make those types of changes too. I wanted to talk about a couple other things with this handheld. So there aren't a lot of differences, right? Because this is pretty much the same thing. And it's about $20 more, which seems a little pricey, especially when these handhelds are getting so cheap. But if you think about it, just the price difference alone would be what I did to put Hall effect sticks into an R36. Without all the other stuff I put on here, that would be just the Hall effect sticks. This also has a better D-pad and better buttons. Membranes are better. I don't like the fact that it doesn't have a forward-firing speaker, and I honestly think the only reason why they did that was so that KINHANK could put their logo on here, or it would have been nice to see them replace this LED. As of right now, there's not a way to turn this LED off, and it charges purple, or pink, I guess, which is neat, and it's blue, but it's very bright, and it is a distraction if you play this handheld at night. Like I stated before, I really fell in love with this, or wanted to order it, because I really like this design. It just looks, I don't know, futuristic, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It reminds me of a video game or like a futuristic type thing, or, you know, what you use in a band or something like that. Now, these buttons on the back, in comparison, now these are better back buttons on this one here. Let's use the white one. Maybe that'd be a better example. You know, all these are a little bit unique on the back, right? So your XU10 is really flat across the back, where your R36S has a little bit more bubble to it, but still pretty flat, but these very loud. I'd say that they're both the same as far as loudness goes on clicking. These are more hollow. These are more pointed. This one does have the removable battery on the R36, which this one is absolutely missing, but I don't know that how important that is to a lot of people. I mean, it is nice to be able to just easy access the battery door. I personally been in this long enough where it's gone back and forth depending on the manufacturer. I don't really care if I have to take 4 screws out or 6 depending on the handheld. That's nor here nor there to me, but if you are not comfortable doing that, then the R36 definitely is a little bit easier for that. But again, if we go back to the back, the R36 is missing this booty. And if you're wondering where this booty came from, this is now the 3rd handheld in the last year to use this, year and a half, I guess. The first one being the RG353V. I love this handheld. It is so comfortable, and without this booty, it wouldn't work. It'd be hard to hold on to, but this is how this is made to be held. And this is important. I'm gonna show you one more handheld here real quick with this booty, but it's very important to understand that this is really made so that when you hold it, you know, it gives you something it just makes it really comfortable, I guess. So when you hold it, just makes it really comfortable. That's all I got for you. But it is super comfy, and I kind of squeeze the sides here, which is kind of, I think, the way that it's meant to be done, and it really does work out well for me. Now, the other handheld that we've seen in the last year or so that's come out with that is the M18, and this is just a really wild handheld for this 16:9 screen, and it just seems kind of crazy to me. But this one also does have that. And again, this is a bigger device, which just blows me away, but everything kind of seems like it's in the right spot, and it does really it works. This is easier to use, honestly, than the RG405V for me, because the 405V's back buttons are so touchy that I hit them on accident all the time. I don't have that problem with this particular handheld. So this is where you kind of see the idea. These bigger handhelds really kind of took advantage of this booty. So now we march in the KA36 and with its booty. This is where it's good and bad. It is not super comfortable to hold the handheld like this. Part of it being is my fingers, even in between the butt cheeks here, they run into each other and overlap, which is not something you have a problem with the bigger ones. The other thing is it's actually kind of squishing your hands in, where when you naturally play these, you know, if you're going to naturally play this, you're out on the outside here, you're kind of balancing on your fingertips. So I get why they tried to do this, but it doesn't really work like that, because it's really hard to play balance, because it's trying to force you to hold it like this. Now, if I had smaller hands, if I was a child, this would be perfect. This would probably fit my hands as like my 10-year-old would probably fit like the 405V does. And so for him, this would probably be very comfortable. In fact, maybe I'll have him take a look at it. And it's harder to hold like this, because now it's almost slippery because of the butt on the back. But there is a big advantage to this that I did not see this butt helping with. That I did not see this design helping with. We have a now 8-month-old. You spend a lot of time only having one hand as you carry them around, feed them, do things like that. Well, that's where like the Mio Mini I keep going back to, and the Mio Mini Plus, because you can do it all one-handed, right? Very difficult to do with these because you're kind of all over the place. It's hard to get like good stability. Oddly enough, because of the design here with these bumps on the back for ergonomics, this actually becomes a really easy handheld to hold with one hand, specifically almost exactly the same. And if you look at the back, it actually measures out about the same where the curve is to how wide the Mio Mini Plus is. So this actually works really well as a one-handed handheld if you want to play those games, if you are doing something like, you know, feeding or what have not with a newborn. So this works well. And if you can see on the back here, I found that this almost works better in some cases than my Mio Mini Plus does now. So I've actually started using this as a device when I'm doing things with the baby, whether it's rocking her to sleep or all the other things I listed before. So that works well. So I think there is an advantage to this. I just don't think it's the advantage that KINHANK thought they were getting when they designed this handheld. All right, so we're just taking a look at a couple of games here real quick, and I really wanted to point this out. So this is a system, this is Sega Saturn, which does not usually work on a 3326, and I'm not sure if this is because KINHANK curates their own lists, and so maybe they create configs for all these different files. Granted, this would be a different chipset than they're used to using, but, you know, they've got the basic premise for what they need to do. So I don't know if I go outside of this ROM set that's on here, if that would change this. But what I wanted to do was kind of show you how, I don't know why this game is working the way that it is. What's so weird is that this stays steady around 55 FPS the entire time you're playing it. It's not every Saturn game, but it's these ones that you usually can't get anything out of. And oddly enough, the ones that I tend to get more out of don't do anything on here. So I don't know what that's all about either. But another thing that's odd about this is this actually is running at 2x resolution. So we're running 2x resolution on Mortal Kombat, and it's actually playing around 55 frames. It just seems nuts to me. I don't see that happening on 3326 devices at all. This is just something specific and unique to this handheld. But we'll go through a couple other games and things, and then we'll kind of move along. I think we're all pretty familiar with what this chipset can do. So I want to show you real quick that when it comes to Sega Saturn, that the Mortal Kombat game is more the exception and not the rule. But you can get decent play on some of these, but this is like obviously super slow. And I don't know if this is running at 2x, but this is native resolution, right? And it's not. Oh man, what's happening? So this is at native resolution, and it is definitely running slow. But if you want to practice a lot of words that I don't know how to say, and usually actually I can, okay, so it's going slow enough where I can't actually even do it. Anyways, this is just kind of to show you another fighting game. It's going slow. All right, we'll carry along. I mostly wanted to go in this because I knew that the Neo Geo was running on RetroArch. As you can see my frame counter up there, I was able to go in and set that, but you can't set a lot of things in RetroArch on this. The frame counter you actually have to set through EmuElec. You can't set it through RetroArch itself because it won't stay on. Every time that you go to make any changes, oops, I wasn't paying any attention. It won't let you save your changes in RetroArch. So the way RetroArch is set up now is if you make a change in it, it's not going to save. So when you exit the game, it will just reset all over again. But if you want to get into RetroArch, you just hit, oh, I can't pause in this game. If you want to get into RetroArch, you just hit select and X. This will bring up your RetroArch menu. One of the disadvantages of RetroArch on here, however, is you can't save anything. So like I put in my retro achievements info, not saved. Now, that doesn't matter because it doesn't have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, so I wouldn't be able to use the retro achievements anyways, at least not the way it's set up now. It's not recognizing the OTG port for a Wi-Fi card. But other things that you cannot do is any kind of game configurations changes you make. The config file for all of RetroArch does not exist as far as entering it. And I even go to show all and do it, still doesn't work. So just something to be aware of. RetroArch is there. You can do it for that game, and next time you want to play that game, you're going to be making those changes again, unfortunately. I think there's already a fix for this, and we will get into that as we get a little further along here. I guess I'd also be aware of when you hit quit, it has a shutdown function in RetroArch, so it actually shut the device completely off when I hit quit through RetroArch instead of just going into the game and exiting. Now you do have the option to play Drastic on here as well, so you can use Nintendo DS. And your swapping key is actually going to be your R2 button. You could also add to the full screen options depending on the game you're playing, and you can do that through Drastic. Now, to get into Drastic's menus, you just left click on the stick and you are in Drastic's menus. And as always, it's almost impossible to read on this handheld because the font is so small. But any kind of changes you want to make, like how the screens react when you hit the R2 button, is going to be within this menu. As well as your FPS counters and things like that. I just wanted to point out that yes, you can use Drastic, and that pushing the stick down, that will pull up the Drastic menu for you. So we're going to run Ridge Racer here on PSP. This is a game I test a lot, and for some reason, on this particular handheld, it does not work particularly well. I mean, we're getting like 7 FPS or something, just crazy like that. So I don't know what's happening here. I might put my own ROM on here and see if I can fix it. I have a feeling they try to game some of these ROMs to make them work better, and sometimes I think they might have missed. Okay, now we're speeding up, so it's not going to get good though. Okay, so I think I've tested enough of these handhelds with the 3326 in it now, dozens of them, I think, at this point. And so you can definitely find some of, if you want some more gameplay footage within my channel, there's plenty of it out there. So I think right here we're going to talk about some kind of the pros and cons here real quick, and we'll button her up. So I do like the grip on the back, but not for the reason why they added this butt to it. It looks pretty, it feels really nice. It doesn't work well, and as you can see, and I even found while I was trying to play a couple of games here, I didn't even realize it before, but I'm interlocking my fingers on top of it. So I'm like interlocking my fingers while I'm trying to play, which is different than how I play with the other handhelds specifically like this. So like I said, I think I do like it, but not for that. I like it for the fact that I can actually hold this with one hand a little bit easier if I'm doing something or multitasking. I guess those are kind of the same thing, but you know what I'm saying. I think the D-pad in here works pretty well. For the games that I've tested it on, it does have a pretty solid pivot on it, but it does work real well. I think it's about the right amount of squish. A hell of a lot better than these crappy ones I put on the R36, so if nothing else, you're getting updated. Again, with the mods I put on my R36S to make it work the way that I want, I spent more on that than what you would spend on this handheld, just in the Hall effect, adding Hall effect sensor sticks alone. Now, no two Halls are alike, and the ones I have are a little bit nicer, but these work pretty well. I don't have any complaints over them. They feel good. They're kind of in the wrong spot. I've been trying to figure out if this is different than the other ones. I think it's only if you hold it the way that it wants you to hold it. The sticks are too low. Then you're going to be using them like this, right? But if you hold it like you would in the other R36 type devices, it's in the right spot. So they're really just, they're too low if you use the device the way that it's kind of ergonomically made to be used. They're far too low. But if you use it like all the other ones, sure, yeah, they work fine. But then when I find myself interlocking my fingers, I think that was my body compensating trying to use these sticks. Your body will do weird things to try to make things work, but I do not like that part of it. I just don't think that that's the way that it should be. This LED light, we need to figure out a way to turn this damn thing off because it hits me in the eye all the time and it bugs the hell out of me. But the face buttons work good. They have about the right amount of squish to them, especially for our handheld in this category. I think these work real well. Again, better than the crap that we had on these. I don't feel like I've got to go in and cut these apart like we did with the R36 or any of that kind of stuff. So all of our face buttons, everything, D-pad, joysticks, it all works better. These are real comfortable on the back here. Again, so instead of it being a flat ledge, you do have a little bit of ergonomics to that, which is what they're adding to all the handhelds now. So the newer generations are kind of using the better back option where they're creating some ergonomics with it. So this already kind of has that built in with a bigger button than you'd get in like an aftermarket button. So it works out pretty well. It's pretty comfortable. I don't have any complaints about that. Would I buy this handheld if I already had an R36? Probably not. I mean, I guess I did, whatever, but for an average consumer, I don't see a reason to buy this unless you do want to do the one-handed thing, because I think it does work really well for that. Now, you are limited on what games you can play one-handed, obviously, but if you are somebody that does that, this might be good for that. If you want something that's a little bit almost easier to hold in the Mio Mini, just because it is a little bit longer, so you do have, you know, a little bit more room, and that's how you can see how it's held like that. It works great for me. If you're just buying this because you think it's going to be better than the R36S, I mean, it is. In a lot of ways, the face buttons, everything else, but as far as performance and what you're going to get out of it in playing it, it's really not going to be any different to a point where it would matter. You have the exact same SoC in here, so you're running a 3326, you're running the same Mali GPU, you know, it's all the same. There's really no differences, same battery. This just lacks the ability right now with the software to add Wi-Fi, so it's a disadvantage there. So the hardware is a little bit different. So if that is important to you, then maybe it would be a good decision. But if you already have an R36S, I think that I would spend the difference in the money, or if you were going to buy this, I might look at buying something horizontal or something a little bit nicer. This right now is priced pretty high. It will come down over time. And actually it's not too high, but it will come down over time. Right now it's just brand new and it's shiny. The one question I know that I'm going to get, and actually I got it, and I already tried this before somebody asked because I was curious about the same thing. So we will take a look at this real quick and then we're going to wrap it up. Since everything on the inside is the same, can you run the memory card off of an R36S on here? Some would say that would make sense, right? And I initially thought that too, other than the fact there's only one card slot, which doesn't necessarily matter because you could put your ROMs and your card on the same folder. But unfortunately for us, I'm just going to spoil it before I even get the memory card in. Oh, get back in there. What are you doing? But unfortunately for us, before we get to that point, this will actually just not get past this screen. So, and by this screen, I mean it won't boot. It's just going to sit here on a blank screen. It is powered on, obviously. Can't miss the light. It ain't doing shit. So it is definitely not going to load up the R36S firmware. And this is the updated R36S firmware too. So just in case that there was any question about that, it would have been nice because the R36S has had some love. But there has been some breakaways that we've found throughout the community where people are actually making some already incremental moves on this handheld. So I don't think it's going to be very long before somebody will break through and we will at least have a way to maybe update it into a more current firmware or something like that. So right now it's right there on that edge, but I'm going to say this and I repeat this all the time. Don't buy a handheld for what you think it might be able to do, because they might just decide that you know what, a new device came out, I'm more interested in that one, I don't want to touch this one anymore, and they'll move on. As somebody who has a lot of handhelds, I completely understand where they're coming from. So don't buy it based off of thinking that yes, there is something coming down the pipe. It may never come to fruition. I think we're still waiting for Garlic 2.0. But that's all I got for you today. Don't forget, every time you like one of my videos, a new handheld is born, so you can add to your collection. Also, don't forget to comment and subscribe. I love your comments, put them down there. I love reading your comments. It gives me something to do when I'm not making videos. Also, share this video with your friends, because sharing helps grow the channel, and sharing is caring, and we care about each other around here. If you like what you saw here, or if you're just looking for something else to watch, YouTube has put up a couple suggestions on the screen here for you. Take a look at one of these. YouTube says you're going to like it. I think that YouTube's usually right, so I would take their advice and check out one of these videos. Help out the watch time. But that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye!